Good morning. This session is being moderated by three moderators. My name is Shelly Halpert. To my right is Rabbi Zecharia Frogtandler, and to my left is Rabbi Sruly Bistritz. The way we're going to break up the time here is as follows, or at least we'll try. We're each going to speak for about 5 minutes to tell you who we are and what we do. And then we'll do that again. Each will speak for 5-7 minutes what they know about today's title of what we're speaking about and what other insights they have through their own experiences in what they do. And you will obviously find out what each of us do. And then we're going to, after about 40 minutes, we're going to open it up for questions from anybody and everybody. And we'll each, you can either direct your question to one of us, to all of us, whatever kind of answers you're looking for. I would like to just ask that the questions that are asked should be general questions. If you have a specific question about your own specific child or relative, we'll be glad to try to make time for you privately, one-on-one, because in all probability, there's a lot of detail that will need to be discussed, and this is not the forum for anybody's particular details to come out into the open. And then we'll each give a final couple of minutes on what we've heard and what we feel we've gotten out of it and what we hope you will have gotten out of it. So first, I'd like to introduce Rabbi Zecharia Frogtandler.
Good morning. Usually when I start conversations with parents, I'm not sure the mic is working. I could talk louder. Can everybody hear me without the mic? Are we good?
No, but for the world.
Okay.
Yeah, so you know what? Yeah.
Okay. No.
Yeah,
No. You switch mics. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's much better. I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. The way I like to phrase it, I'm not a rabbi, and please don't make me prove it. I'm a retired businessman. I spend my day in the morning, I learn in the Klal. In the afternoon, I learn in the yeshiva in Flatbush. I learn with 3 sets of Bachrim, in Yeshiva Yisroel on Nostrand Avenue. And recently, through Avi Fishov's direction, who I've worked very close friend with and we co-authored, not that I'm putting in a plug for our Sefer CPR, I co-authored CPR together with Avi Fishov, and yes, I do recommend it. In addition, through Avi's urging, I counsel parents of what I think, even though the title of this conference symposium, what we hear exactly now in the next hour or so, is what's called, and how do we positively impact children in a group of kids that are functioning, but there are difficulties. And as Shuli said, we want to open this up to questions. Questions should be general in nature. I would just say one little story that I heard over, and I think it's going to help us with our relationship with our children. I, Baruch Hashem, have a large family, and on the doctor's orders, I'm being a little bit careful this Shabbos. I'm not staying. My youngest child's up for his next Shabbos. So I'd like to wish all of you that all you should be zeichet to see all your children, to march them down to the chuppah in order, and I'll be speaking with you just in a few minutes.
Okay. Again, my name is Shelly Halpert. I have been here before by quite a number, if not all of the weekends, at least those that were in America. I'm a businessman, and as a volunteer for the last 15 years, I've been trying to help boys and girls of all ages to find the right yeshivas and schools for what they need, as wide as the spectrum is. In other words, mainstream children kids struggling in yeshiva, those who can't find the right yeshiva, those who are out of yeshiva, and those who, unfortunately, yeshiva becomes secondary and life and safety is the number one priority. Being that I'm not a professional, obviously I make a decision in each and every case. If I'm qualified to try to help, I, Baruch Hashem, have a wide range of people in the professional world that I deal with, that I try to siphon off to the right person to see if we can get them to get help. I started out, many people ask, in fact, I always ask kids when I meet them for the first time in my house, why do they think I'm doing this? And they usually answer, you must like to do chesed. And I said, yeah, but I could have joined Hatzalah, Chaverim, Misaskim, Chesed Shalemes, and I keep going on and on. Why did I choose this particular field? And the answer is sort of obvious. I am a recovered parent of a teen at risk. Now, Avi has trained us to change that to a kip, a kid in pain. However, when I went through my struggles 20 plus years ago, there was no such thing as a kip at that time. There was no Avi Fishoff. There was no help. There were no yeshivas off the mainstream. It was the mainstream in public school. But on the flip side, I have a karas hatov to Rebbeinu Shalom that I went through it in 1999 and in 2000 and 2001, where the street was terrible, but compared to the street today, it was a kollel atmosphere. And in all seriousness, when you're going through a Nisayan, you think it's the worst Nisayan in the world, and trust me, I thought it was, and it was, but things are getting worse. Nobody is getting up on a pulpit anywhere and saying, Baruch Hashem, the issues with our kids, it's getting so much better and so much easier. It's all a reflection of the street. Lo Yaleinu. We have to come to the realization, lahavdil elef havdalas, that the outside street does seep into our communities, into our homes, and it's the parents' job to do the best they can to be a role model for their kids, that they should understand the right hadracha.
Morning. My name is Sruly Bistritz. I'm the director of Resolve. Resolve is a comprehensive resource for struggling teens operating nationally. We provide umbrella resources for teens at every level of struggle, be it in school and parents are noticing things aren't going too well, to possibly one foot out the door, needs resources or to relocate, to he's finished with school and he's on his own, looking for his next big aspiration, to further than that. And we target the children. Teens nowadays has expanded, so it's there 11 up to around 23, and we tried to cover all resources possible. That not every resource is labeled, and not everything that we think is a resource, and things that we don't know could be helpful, could always be helpful. So it tries to cover everything from schools to modified school systems to vocational programs, night drop-in centers, chill matziv for boys who just need a safe place where they can connect with people, to job opportunities at all levels, try and place in areas where they could grow from the job opportunities rather than being a reckless position. Helping with reintegration, post-rehab reintegration, summer programs, extracurricular activities, career planning. And we tried to put together with the parents a plan of action so they could notice all the moving parts in the relationships and the environments and the school systems and the teachers and the principals and their circle of friends, and try and prioritize where are we going to start as our base in creating a positive trajectory for them. A plan of action. Rome wasn't built in a day, and everything is a process. And we try and move along slowly, that they should be able to gain at each step. We help the parents brainstorm and empower them with their own tools. And then slowly we follow the progress. And we have a department that when we do have a mentor or a chavrusa or a study partner or a big brother, big sister that's set up, we follow up with them to see how progress is going and coach them along the way that they can connect in the relationship better and create more of an impact on the teen. And sometimes we'll use one resource, sometimes we'll use two resources, sometimes even more. Sometimes we follow up and find that a resource isn't working, so we change the angle a little bit. And Baruch Hashem, there's been a lot of nice things that that we've been seeing. And the goal is really to empower the parents to know that there are resources out there, and many of them don't exist in the mainstream world. We have to be creative on our own to understand the feelings and the interests, the creativity of our teens, where their talents are, understand where their emotions are, what's blocking them in the mainstream society that's just not working for them, and they'll need a modified system. Sometimes we find that in our own workplace, that this just isn't a business where I can grow and I feel that my talents could be useful elsewhere. There's no difference between us and teenagers. So this is really the goal of the organization. It stretches across the United States, finding any resource that could possibly be of benefit to any teen at any level.
It's working now. It's working. Okay, we introduced ourselves. Now I think it helps make us comfortable. Now it's our responsibility to make you comfortable. I know with these Shabbatonim and through working with Avi, we need to be honest and open and public, as long as we're not hurting anyone else. Shuli, thank you for mentioning 20 years ago in your life. I believe I and her have 12 children. And for a 20-year period, I had 4 teenagers at once. And about 20 years ago, exactly like you said, Shuli, before they were these organizations, I also went through with one of my teenage girls. And we had to be a little bit more proactive. And I think the reason why you were successful and I was successful is the resources were not there. Sruly wasn't here. Organizations weren't here. We really had to figure it out on our own. Not that there weren't people willing to help. There were. But we had to be much more proactive. We had to actually do investigation, inquire, who could help me? What's going to work? What could I try? When you talk to someone, it's interesting when an idea made sense to me that I knew would work, I felt it here. I felt it in my gut. I didn't doubt it. I tried very hard not to change my father's minhagim. My father didn't bench us Friday night when we came home from shul. And I was in the car listening to a tape. I think it was from Yankee Horowitz from Muncie. And he recommended doing it. He said, because you know what? No matter what the week was, and no matter what's going on with you and child, you're benching them, you're putting your hands on their head, you're giving them a kiss. It's part of the family structure. And 1 second, my father didn't do it. It was a Friday afternoon on the way home from work, and they didn't want to tell my wife. She'll say, we don't do it. I just did it. Whenever you hear something, it doesn't matter from who you hear it from, if it sounds right for you and your child, it's right. Trust yourself. You want it for their benefit, and you'll have atzlacha with it. That's an important recommendation. I feel relatively confident in what I do. Today's topic is a little bit, we want to zero in. There are a lot of teenagers that need help. A lot of our children need help. And looking back, again, I said I have 12 children. And several years ago, to one of my sons, I apologized. I didn't get you. I didn't understand you. And he cried, I cried. We have a great relationship, and he's a great kid. But it doesn't even have to be that it's such a serious thing. It doesn't have to be that they're leaving Yiddishkeit, or that they're not functioning, or that they're acting. And of course, if you have those symptoms and those situations, we have to deal with them. But forget about that it's 60%, it's 40%. It's 100% of our children. We're dealing with, I want to tell you a story. I heard it from two sources. And I'm careful when I tell over a story, but each source really gives it enough authenticity. One I heard from a close friend of mine, I heard from Moshe Shapiro Zatzal, and the other I heard directly from I think it was Rabbi Yemeya Sorotskin, who was nifter a few years ago. Rabbi Yemeya was his first name. This is the story. And it goes back to the days of the Brisker Rav, so it's from the 1950s. It's more than 20 years ago. There was a Yid in Bnei Brak that had a few children that were impossible, to use a word. And someone asked the father, how do you manage? How do you cope? He says, I tell myself over and over and over again, one day I'm going to see emes Yiddish anachas from these children. Tell that to myself again, and again. And that's how I cope. Beautiful. This Yid, a short time afterwards, was by the Brisker Rav. And he told over to the Brisker Rav this story, what the father said. Heard this from two sources, and I'd said the sources. The Brisker Rav stopped for a second. Two versions of the story. Change a word, same word really. One version is the Brisker Rav said, Kemat kfira. The other version is Kemat apikursis. The Eibishter doesn't give you children for you to have nachas from your children. The Eibishter gives you children because he took a neshama in his Beis Ganazav, in his treasury of neshamas, and he said, I want you to be responsible for this neshama. Do the best you can. That's it. That's our job. Shimon Russell, we all know very well. He tells a story. I won't go into the whole story now. You probably heard it from Baron Leib Steinman about the love a children needs to see in their parents' eyes. I tell parents that if your child looks into your eyes and sees failure, sees disappointment, I can't help you. You're the source of their confidence. Without you, how can they survive? If HaKadosh Baruch Hu had another way of a child surviving in this world, besides with mommy and tati, abba and imam, mommy and daddy, whatever you're called, then he would have done so. As the Mesilas Yesharim says, barasi Yetzirah, barasi Torah tavlin. The only way to combat the Yetzirah is with Torah. And if someone thinks he can do it another way, have fun failing, because you won't succeed. If the Eibishter created the world that every child needs a mother and a father, lo yaleinu, sometimes children grow up without a mother and a father. But if a child has a mother and father, so the Eibishter is that the Avi HaYisayimim. If a mother and father is taken away never from this world, the Eibishter steps in. Not that the child doesn't need both. Every child needs a mother and a father. It's not possible otherwise. I'm going to leave you for now with two questions, which I want you to think about. The questions are as follows. What is the difference between a child and an adult? We'll give it an age. What's the difference between an 8-year-old and a 16-year-old? They both know what they want. right? Whoever's an 8-year-old in the room will remember what an 8-year-old wants. They very much know what they want. They know what they don't want. They know what they want to do. They know what they don't want to do. How is he or she, how is an 8-year-old different than a 16-year-old? Second question is, why do you think children at least express that they hate their parents? Do you think about these two questions? Why do you think children hate their parents? We'll be back.
Very invigorating words. I always like to hear from another source, from someone else in the trenches. I'm going to try to cover my next 5-7 minutes with as much as I can. Let me just give you a picture. No problem. Last Shabbos, I was in Chicago at the Aguda Midwest Convention. I have married children there. And on Thursday, I went to see one of the newer yeshivas in the United States that's been open for about 6 or 7 years, and I've done a lot of work with them. And we need more yeshivas like that are on a certain level below the mainstream, but not at the bottom of the ladder. And just to give you an idea what kids are all about. So I spoke with the Rosh Yeshiva there for a few minutes. There were about 20 boys there. Some with white shirts, some not. But I sat down with them and I said, okay, I've sent a few boys here, and the Rosh Yeshiva said he would accept them, but the boys said no. So just give me an idea of what your curriculum is, so to say, in accepting a boy into this yeshiva. So listen to these answers. Number 1, no payas behind the ears. That's number 1. Number 2, we already have one boy from Baltimore. No more boys from Baltimore. No Harrys. If you're not familiar with the term, I'm not sure I'm even familiar. You have to ask somebody under 20, and they'll explain it to you in better detail. I don't want to insult anybody's children. And again, I don't even know myself what it is, but we had our own terms in yeshiva growing up. They have new terms today. Don't even try to figure out what's going on. And kohena v'kahena. And I want to tell you, I like the boys there very much, but nobody knows what's going on in the world. Up, down, plus, minus, from, not from, than these kids and these girls. They know it better than we do. Our job is to figure it out. So I want to jump back. As I said, by my son's Vart, some 14 years ago, one of the people that really helped me happened to be a classmate of mine by the name of Yitzchak Mitnick. He's been in the trenches for 25 years. And he happened to have been a Rebbe in the school where my son finally landed. And I told him by my son's Vart that I'm ready now that he's getting married, I'm ready to try to help other parents. So you can give out my number. Sure enough, the next day in my office, in the afternoon, my phone rings. Hello? Yes, Rabbi Mitnick gave me your number. I live in New York. I have 10 children, 8 boys, 2 girls. My first 7 boys are superstars. Stamford, Long Beach, Philly, Brisk, you name it, they're all there. The 8th boy is 14 years old, and he's on the streets of Lakewood. He's been out of the house for 2 months. And her husband, believe it or not, is a mechanech. What happened 2 months ago? The boy did an avla, a bad avla. I don't know what he did, and I didn't ask. The father went and took all of his belongings and wrapped it in his betgewand, in his sheets and pillowcases, and all his clothing, and put it out by the garbage and threw him out of the house. The mother, after midnight, got up and took everything that was there by the front of the house and put it into the garage. The father also went. He had a set of Art Scroll Chumashim with Rashi, which he had bought a year or two before, because this boy, who's on the streets of Lakewood, asked a beautiful kasha by the table Friday night. And the father bought him this set of Chumashim, and in the Bereshis Sefer wrote a full page of how proud he was of this boy. He ripped out that page and gave the set of Sfarim to one of his older sons to take to a Beis Medrash somewhere. Now, as this story is being told to me, I'm saying to myself, I am going to kill Yitzchak Mitnick. What in the world am I supposed to tell this mother? So I said, you gave me a lot of information. Hashem should be with you. Give me a couple of days, and I'll call you back. Let me think it through. I hung up the phone. I called Yitzchak. I said, what were you thinking? What no experience. My son was nowhere near on this level, not at such a young age, never left the house. What did you want me to tell her? Oh, I'll tell you what I wanted you to tell her. I want you to take a picture of your son when he was in the 10th grade in my yeshiva. And I want you to take a picture of the vort from last night, what he looked like. I'm going to give you the address of this father. I want you to ring the bell. And when he answers the door, the first thing you do is put your foot in the door that he can't slam the door on you. And you tell him, you need to get down on your hands and knees and ask mechila from your 14-year-old son, b'chol loshen she'iyeh, if you ever want him to come back home. Because this is what my son looked like, and this is what he looks like today. Now, it's a very powerful story. Let me see, just raise your hands. How many people think I did it? Well, you would be wrong. I wouldn't be able to do it even today. Certainly not in such a drastic, passionate way. And also, I have a little bit of a more passive character to be able to do something like that. But just to give you an idea, and again, this was 14 years ago. To the best of my information, he's 20. He's in his high 20s. He's not married, but he's learning in Lakewood. And he has a relationship with his mother and not with his father, Ad Hayom Hazeh. Which brings me to step number 2. And this has been going on as long as I've been involved in meeting with boys and girls. My process is, the first step is always I meet with the parents, with the child. I won't talk about yeshivas to anybody without meeting the child, because each one, no matter how much information you're willing to share, I need to look into the child's eyes to develop a half an hour relationship with them to get an idea what works best for them. 8 reasons might be good for this school, 6 reasons for that school. You really have to work through it. But what bothers me, and it's still going on today, 90% of the time when people are coming to me, a lot of people come to me with kids trying to get into regular high schools. I'll put that to the side for a minute. But 90% of the children who come to see me about an alternate school come with their mother and not with their father. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. And I've come to the realization that for some reason, fathers are much quicker to throw in the towel. Mothers never, ever throw in the towel on a child, at least from what I've seen. And I'm a father, so I have a right to say it, But, it's all part of the program, women are wired differently. I could explain it to you in another way, but it doesn't match up. We find very often when there's a struggling child in the house, the boys will lean on their mother and the girls will lean on their father. What's the reason? It's very simple. The father went through the yeshiva system with his son, when he was a teenager, and he did what he had to do, and he kept the rules. And really, the end result was good. Now he's looking at this boy who was going through the same yeshiva system. What do you mean you don't want to learn? What do you mean you don't want to get up for davening? I did it. Even if they don't say it, that's what they're thinking. And the mother is the same thing with the girl. I kept tznius when I was in school, ad hayom hazeh. I did everything. I never woke up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Why are you doing that? Whereas the father of the girl will try to he doesn't really get the metzias, so instinctively always, now there are exceptions, but we know these kids, they know how to press buttons. I don't even want to go into that subject. So what makes me, with all trying to sound as humble as I can, what makes me good at what I do? Well, I have 2 cardinal rules. I never meet any boy or girl in a white shirt. I don't wear white shirts except for Shabbos and Yom Tov. You have no idea what it means. And I'm not lavdafka in the Hasidic community, also in the Litvish community. If they see somebody today wearing a colored shirt, okay, he's not one of them. That's just the way. He's not a Minal, he's not a Rebbe, he's not trying to pull me somewhere. That's number one. The second one, which is sort of a side note, I'm a bucky in sports ad hayom hazeh. From the time I was 8 years old. When I was 9 years old, my father told me at least 2,000 times, "Wenn es dich schon uplosen von der Narrigkeit." And every once in a while, in the last 10 years, I look up and I smile and I fool myself into thinking, listen, the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted me to know sports so that I could communicate with kids. I'll tell you a quick story on that. I had a boy who was thrown out of a New Jersey dorm yeshiva because he left the yeshiva on a Sunday night and went to the Meadowlands to a Sunday night football game. And the boy came in, he wouldn't admit to me what he did, sitting there for a half hour. And I couldn't, he was broken. And it was a mainstream yeshiva. And finally, he said, I climbed out the window and I went to the Meadowlands and I came back and someone in my room ratted me out. I would assume that you know what that means in today's language, right? Anyway, which is another story also. Masira is such a problem today, but this is not the time and place. Anyway, I said, when was this? He says, 10 days ago. I said, Sunday night, 10 days ago, the Jets lost in overtime. You should have seen the kid's eyes. Within 5 minutes, he told me every Aveira he ever did in his life. But think about it. All of this comes back to trust. If the child trusts you and feels you're on his side, and he has confidence that no matter what he's going to tell you is not going to go any further, you have a very good chance of connecting. 2 more very quickly. And this I'll say in Yiddish, and the people who even speak limited Yiddish will understand. One of the biggest problems we have today as parents is Vus vet jener zugen. And to be honest, it's a bigger problem in Borough Park and Williamsburg and in Monroe than it is in Flatbush. But I will tell you that when I was a parent in this predicament 20 years ago, for a kid to walk down the street in a t-shirt, it was unheard of. I saw my son walking home from shul without his hat on, carrying it on the side. I lost my mind. Now, so today already, unfortunately, kids off the derech and struggling has exploded. So we're starting to be a little bit calmer. But, in the more Hasidic circles, you can't live your lives with vus vet yona zogen. And for those who don't speak English, what is my neighbor going to say? That's not what life is about. And in 2021, I can tell you that your neighbor, there isn't a person in the Yiddish world who doesn't have a relative, a friend, or a neighbor that is struggling with one of their children. So just get over it. I can't tell you how many people came to me after my son got married and said, I don't know how you did it, that you got through this and you were never embarrassed by the way he was dressed, by the way he handled himself in general, when he came to shul or when he came late or when he didn't come to shul. It's sort of like a mountain that you have to climb. But once you get over it, you just don't let it affect you. And I'll end with this story, which I've said already by Kesher Nafshi, but I'll just say it again. When my son started struggling, my parents, Aleichem Mashalom, were both Hungarian survivors. My father was from the depths of Europe, and for the Hasidic people in here, from Hoidu Nanash. And he had a European way of thinking, which I was raised by. I wouldn't say he did a great job with me, but he did an okay job. And I sent my older brother, I have one brother, and I said, you got to go to Tati and tell him this is going to be a long process, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. Look, but don't touch. In other words, observe, but there's no comments. Any comments you have, you come to me, to my brother, and he'll decipher and digest and whatever. And I got to tell you, my father, Zecharia, did a phenomenal job with that. He never judged my son, not the way he was dressed, not where he was, not the car he was driving, whatever it was. He was about 19 or 20 years old, Baruch Hashem, well on his way back, but he was still wearing jeans with all the cuts in them, all over the place. On a Friday afternoon, I sent him to Borough Park to pick up something from my parents. And he was about to leave, and he says, Good Shabbos, Bobby, Good Shabbos, Zaidi. As he was about to walk out, my father went over to him and he says, I want to just ask you a question. What is it about your hoizen? Why do they have to have so many holes? If it's a question of money, I'll give you the money. Go and buy a pair of pants. And by the way, I didn't observe this. This my son told me. And he says, I turned to him and I said, Zaidi, you'll never understand the Shabbos.
Thank you, Shelly. I just want to start that my English name is Harry. That's all.
Now you tell me.
I'm kidding. I was that guy.
But you're not from Baltimore.
I actually am, but no. Just one or two short anecdotes. I was once driving out of town to a hospital, and I think I've noticed over time, just obviously it wasn't in recent time, but I always have the luck of a GPS inventing new ways for me to get to places, get to see all different sites. I had come off a side county road that led right into a very small rural town, and the speed limit dropped very sharply from the almost highway road into the town. And there was a police officer perfectly placed, just eating his lunch at that spot. And within a few seconds, there were lights on behind me. Little did I know that little town was on lockdown, and the state troopers were all over the town. So a few weeks later, when I showed up in the civil court to pay the ticket, there was a line through the courthouse like in Six Flags. Every door was open. There were people working on their computers, and there was a line right in front of them. The place was chaos. So I did what I had to do, and I ended up in the small room at the end by the clerk, where everyone pays the fine. So we're standing there in awkward silence, a whole bunch of people, some grumbling, some happy that it's over. And there were 2 seats at the far end of the room. And there was a young South American boy, like a Metro PCS in a purple t-shirt. And next to him was a very tall, strong, big, burly man, older man. And they're sitting and talking, making small talk. And at one point in the conversation, the young boy started talking to the older man about his goals and aspirations, and he was working in a cell phone store because really he wanted to be in the music industry. It was a very interesting conversation to listen to. And I tuned out a little bit, tuned back in, and he was giving him all of the allegorical long haul. You just got to keep your eye on what you want to do and get out there and do it. Nothing concrete, and the boy sitting there listening to all of his And then the taller man was called up his name was called to pay his fine. So he stood up and he kept on standing up. And he was a giant of a man. And the young boy noticed that he was wearing a U.S. Army cap. So he quickly jumps out of his seat to shake his hand. You served? He said, sure did. So he said, thank you for your service. He shook his hand. And then he said, before he went to the desk, he says, so what did you do in the Army? What were you doing? And he rattled off something that sounded very elite. It was like 451 Platoon 9 Black Hawk or something like that. And the boy says, wow, it's amazing. So what did you do? I delivered the mail. And the entire room is just trying to control their laughter. And he says, I was like Santa Claus in a uniform. He paid his ticket, he walked out. And the whole time I'm driving back, I'm saying, how could you be in the Army in rank and file with some elite soldiers and training, and you're a mailman? And he is proud, and he wears his hat, and he walks around with everything that he has when his rank was average. So other people walking around with decorated veterans, and his tenure in the Army was delivering the mail. That was just a thought for most of my ride back, that in the school system and in society, where we fit in so many stigmatic just circumstances from all sides, it's very difficult how to manage socially, how to manage emotionally. Some people are stronger in different areas. Some boys or girls are weaker in different areas that can't connect. Where do we find that the sense of identity and pride in what we are able to do and what we are proud of? It's very valuable to just find that point of success and build from there, to build that image in where they are indifferent to the surroundings, because there's always very difficult surroundings. And the world is a harsh world, but our world only needs to exist within us. And that's a point that we like to convey to our children. And that's a point that we like to brainstorm on our own. Where is their strong point, and expand from there? And also taking into account, something else comes to mind now, then I'll be brief. I was once standing in a bank waiting to make a deposit, and the bank had just started advertising their brand new ATM machines. So they put this huge edifice of a machine in the middle of the bank for everybody to come and try. So it's a very quiet bank, and the man went up to the ATM machine, and you hear, beep, beep, beep. And then all of a sudden you start hearing, and the bank is quiet, and you're hearing as if he was taking out $5,000 in singles, and the entire machine is just making noise. So my younger son, who was standing with me, turned to me and he said, Tao, why are we on this line? That machine's handing out money. So when we got back in the car, I explained, see, I was actually putting away money so that we'll have in the account. That man was taking out, he was on his way to be losing money. The perspective on things and how things work in the world shouldn't be a taboo concept, and it shouldn't be something that's necessarily self-understood. The inner workings of how society works is things that we should be conveying to our children, so they understand when surprises come their way and they don't know how to process. It's not behind the curtain. They could stand behind that curtain too and know exactly how things work, and then they're confident and they're more resilient to be able to handle circumstances that aren't exactly of their best interest.
Okay, so as we said in the beginning, we're now going to open it up to questions. Please feel free to really talk about any subject that you like other than the stock market. I mean, as far as our kids are concerned, relationships, boys, girls, etc. And once we're finished with the questions and answers, we'll each finish then with another 5-6 minutes of our closing remarks. So please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. Yes, in the back. Just speak up, please.
Stand up, please.
want to take it?
Probably both the questions would, of course, my colleagues are welcome to answer it. Both of the questions would probably be best answered on an individual basis with each of you. But it goes back to general question of why do children seemingly hate their parents?
Yeah.
And their children have within them, to whatever degree they're not successful, there's anger in them. Now, anger suppressed is not something teenagers do well. It's a lot easier for them to take their anger out on someone else. So the answer to one of my questions is, why do children hate their parents? Because they can. Because if they tried that with anyone else, they would lose a friend. Whatever the relationship is with anyone else, if they would show anger to them, that would be the end of the relationship. What you need to do is not, now if you know the answer to your question, what you're doing wrong, then just stop doing that. But if you honestly don't have an answer, then it's not you. It's your child is going through a difficult time. And that's what has to be addressed. And really that needs to be answered on an individual basis. Please welcome to...
I was asked that when someone asks a question, I should repeat the question that everybody heard it. So the question was, and a very, very fair and a painful question, why is it always the parents who feel they've done nothing to be even aggressive with their child, but they've become abusive before 30 seconds have gone by? So this is the world that we live in, that number one, and this is a fact also, and I went through this also. When the dust settles, when you're under the chuppah and the child is getting married and everything is great, the fact is the last person or the last two people in the world to see nachas, real nachas from that child are the parents. I don't know how many times people came to me on the street and said, I met your son last night. He's such a sweet boy. He's a balder cheretz. He talks nicely. And, you want to come into my house for about 10 minutes? And so you have to understand, you are the line of defense. And to take it a step further, and this is my own observation, lahavdal elef havdalas, the goyim, you think they don't have kids who go off the derech? But they don't have a derech. By the goyim, straight to drugs. There's nothing. There's no religion. So how do I get somebody's attention? I go to drugs. By the Yidden lahavdal, we have a religion, we have a Torah. For a child to get their parents' attention, all it takes is one haircut, one piece of clothing different than everybody else. And I know you don't like to hear this, but they're crying out. That's their way of showing it's not working for me right now for whatever reason. And to go back to the specifics of your question, forget about what you said. Think about this. These kids read your eyes 24/7. You get up in the morning and they come in, sometimes it's the afternoon or the early evening. All they have to do is just see you and they can read it. I know you're disappointed in me. You didn't say anything, but they see how you look. If by chance they're ever in the morning where the other kids are going to school, Moshe Lazar Gesint, I love you, and this. Now, you're certainly not on a level where you can say that to this child, so you say nothing. But they know it. They know it. Now, how do you balance that? Rabbi Taub gave this over so beautifully yesterday. There's a neshama there. It's very hard. So you're dealing with a teenager to begin with. You're right. They have a mindset, and so do you. Theirs is immature. Yours, hopefully, is immature, coming from life experiences. And we're expecting to have a conversation with them on an even keel. It doesn't work. That's another burden on us to understand that what they're saying in their mind makes sense. And even though you know it's immaturity, you have to be able to balance it. But think very seriously about the eyes. You have no idea. And again, you can't overdo it either. You can't have this big smile when they come in that I love you. You have to learn how to balance it. And I guarantee you, everyone in this room can learn it, each in their own way. Once you get past the eyes, you have to try to let them lead the conversation. Your issue is that you're being abusive. So start right away. Besides good morning, let's see what they want to talk about. If they want to be quiet today, it's going to be a quiet day. But the minute you might say something that in your eyes is not abusive, but if it triggers anything, did you just look at my haircut? I saw you look. That's all it takes.
Just to add to Shelly and Zecharia, at Resolve, what we try and do is find the core of where all this began. The question that was asked could be at many different stages in a relationship. That same terminology of why are you so abusive could be at a very late stage in the relationship. Just emotions are running high and we've already lost the content of the conversation. It's really just me against you, and it's all territorial. I can't give an inch because then I lost. Or, well, if you do this, then, well, I can't say that. So we have to figure out, bring ourselves back to basics. Try to understand how did the relationship develop. What were you trying to accomplish? Did you have an agenda? Were you pushing a certain agenda? Were they pressing buttons? Did you give an inch and they took a mile? And then when we start understanding where things came from, so then we like to advise you can move into collaborative thinking. Now, again, I'm stressing it really depends at what stage in the relationship we are. But a lot of this is an open conversation where we try and understand two sides, almost in buying a house. How much are you willing to spend? Well, you have to notice that, the tile over there is broken. Well, I was thinking that really wasn't such a big deal because, tile's very cheap now. Oh, you value that as something as being important. I didn't see it that way. So when we're able to put all of the feelings on the table, we're able to put all of the perceptions on the table, we got a lot clearer where everybody was coming from. And the language of you're being abusive becomes, why are you pushing me so hard to do X, Y, and Z? So it changes it from a very emotionally charged argument to very simply trying to figure out, I was trying to accomplish this. Oh, now I understand where you're coming from. Really, we only like to do it in our house like this. But I think we can make an accommodation that this could work for you too. Would that be okay? Because I really see it only working this way or that way. Did you have a different way that you thought maybe this could work? Let's entertain it. Let's see if that works. And when we're able to diffuse the generalization and understand the trees rather than dealing with the forest, the terminologies become a lot less painful because they're not labels anymore. They're feelings. And we can discuss our feelings openly, collaborate to end up with a better result.
I just want to throw in on that thing. Just keep in mind, how often does this happen? The boy or the girl comes upstairs or downstairs, whatever the logistics of your house is, and you're on the phone, and the mother, usually it's the mother that's in the kitchen. He just came upstairs. I'll call you later. That's all he has to hear. Or the girl. She, you don't even use their name. She just came upstairs. I'll call you later. Now you're just you're like trying to cover conflict. You're like, well, what do you think the kid feels like? Well, what am I, a donkey? These little things, they're all little things and they all add up. And trust me, I went through them. What you need, I was just telling a parent the other day, yesterday. I trained myself. When there were times when my son did things and I was already on a better level. I used to work in the Bronx and I had a long ride home and I knew I'm walking into, he did X, Y, Z, whatever it is. I pulled into the driveway. I put the car in park And I yelled at him to the best of my lungs and let him have it for 30, 40 seconds. And then I shut off the car, and then I went back inside, and I was fine. I got it out of my system, because there was no chance, if I would have walked straight into my house, that I wouldn't have let him have it. Next question.
And if it's directed for one of us in particular, please say so. Let's try to get in. It's getting time is zooming by. No pun intended.
Stand up, please.
We as women who have this natural proclivity to be connected with our children and not to discard them. As the days of connecto, that seems more like connecto. How do we help our husbands facilitate that connection so that they see the light and
Go ahead.
Not answering that question. Yeah. Okay. The question is, how do we teach the men to be more proactive? Shuli mentioned something, and I find it true, and it's because we intend to want our children to be like we think or thought we would end up. It's easier for fathers to relate to daughters and for mothers to relate to sons. I actually find, even though maybe when it comes to yeshiva placement, you find that it's way out of proportion. It's not as out of proportion as you make it sound. It's really a question of getting it. And it is easier to cross gender. Whichever parent, now when both parents are proactive, it's of course much healthier for the parents, for the child. If one parent is taking a lead role, the best thing that parent can do, sometimes it's not even a teachable skill. It's not. I had with my daughter, and my wife's a remarkable woman. She couldn't get past certain things, and she admits it. She couldn't. Sometimes there's something you can have. Kiva Tat says we're all born with a toolkit, and some of us are given power tools. Some of us are given rusty screwdrivers. We all have talents, and we all have to use our tools to build something. So what are we supposed to build? Yourself. Your tools are to build yourself. Everyone has to recognize their own strengths. If you have a child that needs you, and that's equal responsibility on mother and father, it's the responsibility of the mother and father to be there for the child. This is your child. Your prime responsibility is not to teach your spouse how he or she should be more like you. I think you're inviting disaster. But this is not what this little get-together is about.
So, and just to add to that, I meet hundreds and hundreds of parents, and I'm always learning and I'm always watching. It's Eina Doima, a child who's even in a slight crisis. If the parents are on the same page, that is 90% of the battle. Because if the parents are on a different page, so what does the kid do? Look, my parents are fighting anything. I know when I need money, I'll go to this one. When I need this, I'll go to that one, and let them work out their own troubles. And because of that, schools, and I agree with them, when we realize, even in the very early stages, that we have a child who needs help, and we try to find a therapist, if you feel, either the husband feels or the wife feels, that the two of you are not on the same page, there's nothing wrong with both of you going to seek help to how to deal with this particular child. There are such mumchim out there that, I've had parents come to me, I have no idea what this person did for me, in order to me to understand how to deal with my child together with, you're a team. If the father and mother are a team, I'm telling you, you're solving a good chunk, if not most of the problem.
Just want to broaden the discussion, even though it was targeted towards mothers who have a greater proclivity to not forsake their children, be connected to their children. It's not that I get the exact vernacular. If at Resolve we find daily It can really happen on both sides of the mechitza. You can have a father who's calling, and he's calling incessantly, or you have a mother who's calling, and they're very driven and motivated. And a lot of that, I think it's really for an article in a magazine, not for this podium, but it really depends on dynamics in the home, what's weighing on who is more busy, who has the more direct role in the house. It can really go both ways. But if we're trying to impact the spouse to see our way, I feel the mashal helps, because I think maybe most of us are in this. If you're trying to repaint your home, I like blue. No, but gray. Blue. How could it not be gray? So we haven't really gotten down to what's going on under the surface. We just have the way we see it, like Shelly had said earlier. He has the way it's supposed to be, the way he did it, and that's the way it should go. And the other spouse says, wasn't in that disposition, so was able to see past that. So how do you impact the spouse to see past either the way they thought things were supposed to be, or their life experiences which led them down that path? We have to make them and this is where we have to do our diligence, so we have to make them more familiar with the spirit of the times. We can't talk to them from their perspective to change blue to gray. But we could say, what were the couches that you wanted in that room? What picture did you want to put on the wall? Oh, so I think that would complement that better if we would put it like this, and there's different shades there, and there's different, well, the flooring kind of matches this better. You didn't try and tell him that gray is blue or blue is gray. You were trying to show him the greater perspective of there's more moving parts in this whole picture than your agenda. So we can explain to them how his social environment works. We can explain to him how the Rebbe interacts with him. And sometimes having that information already prepared, as if we've spoken to the teacher and we know how he reacts in school. You know, when he learns with his chavrusa, or when he stays after school to do the extra enrichment course, he's on task. And when he comes home at the end of the day and he's very tired, and even if he's eaten supper already, to sit down with you to do an extra 15 math problems, it's already at the end of his day. Well, when I came home, I did 50 math problems. Yeah, well, your day ended 2 hours earlier. He's going 2 days more. So if we talk more facts, rather than why can't you just be more involved, or he needs you to be there, so then we're kind of bypassing the collision and giving them tools to process and understand where you're coming from.
Okay, we'll take one more question, and then and I would ask if whoever decides to be the last person to ask a question, I will gladly, and I'm sure my Rabbi Zecharia has to drive home, so he may have to leave, but we're here for Shabbos. We'll be glad to answer any questions. So we'll take one more question, and then we'll each close with a few minutes. I'm only going to take the gentleman because so far we only took from the ladies' side. Go ahead. Stand up, please. Right. So the question was that my story had a happy ending and is having a happy ending. And how do you relate to that? That's a very, very hard question. From my own experience, I can tell you, I didn't know anybody who had a happy ending because there was no beginning in those days. So again, like Zecharia said, we were so isolated in the closet with what we were dealing because nobody else was dealing with it. But I can say, I wouldn't say that every day I told myself Hashem's going to give me nachas from this child. I wouldn't say I did that. But as the process was going on, and those of you who have never heard, Rabbi Russell has a 5-stage program that he's given here on more than one occasion on the progression A, B, C, and D with denial and acceptance and, plan A and plan B, so that you can understand once once you get past that first stage of denial, you know what I think is happening, as much as I'm going to deny that it's not happening, you know what? It's happening. Once you reach that stage, you have to convince yourself that there's going to be a happy ending. I've been to at least 25 weddings of boys and girls that I met 6, 4, 10 years earlier, who there was very little hope that I would be attending those weddings. And I got to tell you, from my own perspective, to walk into a wedding like that and just making eye contact with the father of the chassan or the father of the kala, and we're the only two people in the room besides the chassan who know every detail of what went on here, and look where we're holding now. But I understand, all I'm giving you is more hope. You have to hold on. There is an Eibishter here, and he has a plan. And he may decide that this family is going to deal with a crisis for a year, for 3 years, for 8 years, for 9 years. They will have 60% of success. They'll reach 80% success, 100%. That we have to leave to the Eibishter, as long as you're ready to accept the child. And the more you accept them, every day that you accept them more, you have a better chance of having a happy ending.
Okay, we'll try. I'm going to try to explain in a few minutes what my method is. It is successful in a lot of situations, certainly not successful in all situations, and it's really up to the parents. As I said earlier, when you hear something that seems like it's going to work, you should try it. I will say that 100% success is not measured by your definition of success. 100% success is, like I mentioned earlier, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you a neshama. He said, take care of that neshama for me. That's my special neshama. Your success is measured totally and only by what you give of yourself towards your child. It's difficult, but it's simple. It's simple, but it's difficult. So I'm not here to say it's any less difficult or easy, but happy ending, not happy ending. Kadosh Baruch Hu has a plan for every single neshama in this world. Why neshamas are here? Certainly above my pay grade. And we have to accept that. I'm not saying words that are going to make it easier or less difficult. But I will say that it's not 40%, 60% happy ending, not happy ending. Let me just describe briefly what I do. Nothing in this world is accomplished without discipline and sacrifice. Nothing. No one in this world ever accomplished anything. That's a big, bold statement. It's from baking a cake to whatever example you want to give. If you don't have discipline, you're not willing to sacrifice, you will accomplish zero. Now, all of us are experiencing, we have someone in a house that doesn't respond well to discipline and sacrifice. It's just not working. So we're going to try a different approach. And we're going to try having conversation with our children, preferably not at home. At home, parents tend to be, well, not in my house. You're not coming to the Shabbos table dressed like that in my house. So get out of my house. If you can't do it figuratively, at least do it literally. It works. You're going to give a simple speech, a very abridged version. You're going to sit down with your son or daughter and say, you know, I didn't make the decision that I was going to be your father or mother, or you were my son or daughter. I was born, and Baruch Hashem, thank God, from the happiest days of my life, I had you. But now I'm here, and you're here. Now, when you were an infant, I knew exactly what my responsibilities were. If I didn't feed you, you would have starved to death, frozen to death. When you're 2 years old, if I didn't hold your hand outside, you would have been run over by a car. Go through this with them. Now you're 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever age you are. I can't exactly fall off the map. I can't, after 120 years, when Hashem asks me, you know, you were a great parent till your child was 15, but what happened? Well, I don't know. She told me enough, so I stopped. I don't think Hashem wants to hear that answer from me. Ask your son or daughter, what do you think? So why don't we try something very novel? Why don't I try to tell you what I think my role is, what my responsibility and obligations are to you, and actually what I think your responsibility and obligations, not to me, but what are your obligations, responsibilities in this world? Now, don't ask for an answer now, but say, since obviously you look at yourself as an adult, I remember my 14-year-old, my famous 14-year-old, who thought she was all grown up. I said, really? When you're 18, mean you're not growing up anymore? You're done? You're all grown up. No, of course when I'm 18. Oh, so you're not all grown up. But yes, you are an adult. Stress and emphasize. Stress and emphasize, stress and emphasize over and over and over again. Your child is an adult. And I'm going to talk to you as an adult. I'm going to treat you as an adult. But adults communicate. So can you clue me in? Now, if your oldest child, it's easier, but if it's not, the dynamic between every parent and child changes. Trust me. The daughter that I was mentioning before and earlier, when I started saying, but your older sisters didn't do that, she said, Abba, that was 10 years ago. I had children over a 20-year period. You can't even use the same skills you used on your last child. It's a different world with every child. Learn, it's a different sugya. Learn it. But talk to your child, but mean it. Mean it that you're talking to them as an adult. And you're going to say, I have a question for you. Please tell me, what do you think my responsibility and obligations are to you? And what do you think your responsibility and obligations are? Never ask for an answer on the spot. But you ask for an answer and remind them, I want an answer. If this is going to work, right? You didn't ask your 1-week-old child, do you want me to feed you now? But again, we're adults. Adults communicate. And an adult stops communicating, that means by definition, one of us is not an adult. So we have to talk the talk and walk the walk. We have to treat our children as adults. We can call that empowerment. We put that in the driver's seat. The question I asked before, what's the difference between an adult and a child? It's a one-word answer. Consequences. Children cannot process consequences. An 8-year-old doesn't know consequences. A 16-year-old does. Whatever it is, whatever behavior, because discipline is not working. But we already established with our children that without discipline, we can't accomplish anything. And of course, my dear child, you want to accomplish. Of course he wants to accomplish. So it's a very short version of what I do. I'm not going to say it's highlights. I did take notes, but I'm not giving my own lecture here. It does work. Does it work in every situation? No. I will not be of a Shabbos. My wife's not feeling well. I must go back. Next week I got to mention the offer for my youngest son. But my email, I'm on WhatsApp, and not that I'm advertising myself, but when I retired from business, Baruch Hashem treated me very well. And my Rebbe told me to get involved, give of yourself, give of your time. And I had no idea what. And my friend Avi suggested this, and I listened. And so I'm available. I don't have a fee schedule. I will make myself available. If you do need me, please don't hesitate to reach out. I wish you all the most hatzlacha and a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you.
I want to close, but I want to first say that, believe it or not, Zecharia and I met today for the first time. We never met each other. And I'm glad to see on my end that there's another member of Klal Yisroel that gets it. And it's something very real.
And we live 2 blocks away from each other.
Very close-knit Flatbush community. And that's probably one of the reasons why after 42 years now, I am moving to Jackson. But that's another story. I want to close with a story, but I just want to throw this out there before I tell you the story. Many times, this is with boys as opposed to girls. I'll ask a 16 or a 17-year-old, and I know what they're doing, and they're into anything and everything. And I said, just do me a favor. 10 years from now, describe what I'm going to see about you. Oh, I'll be married. I'll have a few kids. They'll start going to yeshiva. I said, going to yeshiva? You're not in yeshiva. Oh, my kids are going to yeshiva. And I know all the shenanigans that are going on today, so they won't be able to pull anything over in my eyes because I know it all. And I just respond to them. The same way when I was a teenager, I thought I knew it all. And when I became a parent, the world changed. I don't know if I want to think about where the world's going to be in 10 years from now, but I tell that 16-year-old, you're really going to have to do a lot of homework because the kids will always be one step ahead of the parents. So I want to close with a story under the heading of, and this is really why I'm telling this story, every single child is different. Doesn't matter how many similarities there are, they're all different and they all have to be treated personally and separately and independently. Now, this story is both sad and funny, but when I finish it, you'll understand. About a year ago, parents called me, brought me their 15-year-old son, who was not functioning in yeshiva at all, and it was time to move on. Baruch Hashem, that yeshiva was nice enough, which I wish all yeshivas would do. They did not send the boy away until he had another yeshiva to go to, which really, unless it's a real case of chayto machtes harabim, what all schools should do. I answered the door. These parents come in. The boy was, in my days, they used the term pipsqueak, if anybody know what that is. But he was a tiny little kid. They didn't even get a chance to sit down. He turns to his parents and he says, remember, we're here tonight about me. You don't open your mouth unless I ask you to. So now, under normal circumstances, there's a one-word answer that we all know, a frask, right? I mean, but, being I do what I do, I'm observing, and I saw the reaction of the parents. They didn't flinch. This is one of the nicer things he said to them on that particular day. They sit down and we start talking. I'm talking to the boy, and I can't seem to make a connection with him. He's trying to give me this tough persona, especially because he's a small kid. They train themselves to be tough. And I don't know what to do. And I say this with a lot of emotion. And I find it all the time, and I'm sure other people in this field, when I'm stuck sometimes, I get a lightning bolt of siyata d'shmaya. I can't explain it. And I don't know what made me say this, but I said, you know what? I want to ask you a question. If you could watch a video of anything in Jewish history from Brias Olam until today, what would you like to see? Again, I don't know why I asked it. Kid goes, wow, that's a great question. Let me think for a minute or two. And he turns to his parents, you guys be quiet. He's asking me. I'm sitting there, it's quiet. After a minute, he says, you know what? I'm still thinking of the answer, but I'm throwing it right back at you, which is today's lingo. He's asking me what video I would like to see. And again, never thought about it. Took me about 30 seconds and I got siyata d'shmaya. I said, you know what I would like to see? I would love to watch the way Yaakov Avinu had 12 children and had 12 different relationships with each one of those kids. And he was able to balance the relationship every minute of the day, depending on who he's talking to. The kid goes, wow, that's a great answer. I wish my parents would understand that. So, Baruch Hashem, I made an inroad, at least I see, and there's work to be done. They went home. I never saw them again. I think I spoke to them on the phone, but whatever. That's the sad part of the story. That Shabbos, I went to my oldest daughter and son-in-law, who have Kenai Hara, a very big family with a lot of boys. And I told over this story, obviously without names. And I said, I want to go around the table. I want everybody to answer what video they would like to see. Let's have a discussion. The words didn't come out of my mouth when an 18-year-old boy stood up and he said, Zaidi, you know what I would love to see? I would love to see the way Pinchas stabbed those two people. My mouth fell open and it doesn't but I said to myself, this kid is watching video games. I mean, something's going on here. And the place is going crazy and the siblings are, you're out of your mind. And when I got my composure back, I told them, if I took a piece of paper and wrote down my top 100, that would not be in there. And I was totally at a loss. After the meal, an hour later, we were sitting in the den, and he comes over to me and says, Zaidi, I just want you to know that last week we learned the Gemara, how Pinchas walked around with the spear, with both people still attached to it, and showed Klal Yisroel that this is what had to be done to stop the Magefa. So I had a little bit of a nechama that at least I knew where it came from. But just to give you an idea, every kid is different. And I will be here over Shabbos. I'll be glad to talk to anybody who would like to talk to me. Go ahead. Okay, so it was a pleasure here. And everybody should enjoy the Shabbos and get chizik in every which way possible.